War Eagle Auburn family, welcome back to another edition of E2C Network Live, where we sit down, we get together, and we talk about what's going on in the world of the Auburn family spectrum. We're always heavy on the sports here, but if it's orange and blue, it is what we do. Thank you for joining us, whether you're watching live or on the replay. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, spending some time with us to talk about what we love about the Auburn Tigers, and some days what we don't love about the Auburn Tigers and the frustrating nature that they can be sometimes. On this live stream, an impromptu live stream, we're going to be discussing Auburn football losing yet another coach. The offensive coordinator, Austin Davis, has officially left Auburn football. I can confirm that now, even though that's already been pretty obvious. I even am looking at the roster of coaches right now listed on auburntigers.com, and he has been removed. So there is no question about it at this point. Austin Davis has left Auburn football after a mere, weeks on the job, or month maybe on the job here at Auburn football. It's frustrating. It's confusing. It's unfortunate timing in several different ways for Auburn. We just want to talk about it, kind of react to the news, see what you're thinking, maybe talk about what will probably be taking place after that. Just kind of wrap our heads around it. And while this will not be a stream mainly about doom and gloom and all that kind of stuff, we do want to kind of talk about some realities of the situation, unfortunate timing and things like that. All of that encompassed here in this live stream, my reactions, but most importantly, your reactions as well. So as you're getting here into the live stream, whether you're watching live or on the replay, a lot of you know the drill already. Post where you're watching from, city, state, international, all that good stuff with a War Eagle. Let me know where you're watching from and that you're here. We got a lot of our channel members and Booster Club members already checking in to say hello. If you enjoy this type of content as well, we appreciate you smashing that like button to help the channel out. So like I said, mainly just kind of riffing here and talking about the initial thoughts and impressions of it. And while we're not going to entertain just over the top negativity and doom and gloom stuff, we are going to talk about some frank stuff here. Thomas, good. Thanks for checking in from Leeds. That didn't last long. There are much, the funny thing is people are forgetting this already. That what was it? Tracy Rocker was pretty much a shorter stay as an assistant coach than Austin Davis was. Austin Davis actually probably had a hand in a few things here at Auburn before he left, but unfortunately, his time is done here at Auburn. The turnstiles continue. Thanks for checking in from Louisville. Hey, by the way, quick aside, are you giving it to the Louisville fans right now for thinking they were going to steal Bruce Pearl from us on a happy note? We can at least talk about that war. You just let me know if you've been having some fun with them over there. Coming in from the middle of Georgia. Jamari, thanks for checking in. Good crowd already starting here on an impromptu live stream. I appreciate you guys tuning in on not a regular show day. As we get into the stuff today, we'll also hear about our Booster Club, which is what brings the show to you today. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the live stream. All right, so Austin Davis left. I don't have the specific time frame he was here. I think most people assume that he had a pretty decent hand in getting Robbie Ashford to come here, maybe Zach Calzada, all of that in between. And so that's kind of the mark that he leaves, at least in terms of that. So there's a couple of different angles that we can talk about with this news today. We can talk about, what's the bad things that come of it. And obviously that's probably the easier things to talk about, but what's probably maybe not necessarily the good things, but the way it doesn't really affect or hurt Auburn all that much. So think about it this way, just to kind of start things off. Austin Davis, for all intents and purposes, was assumed to be the offensive coordinator in title alone, right? So that meant Bryan Harsin, the offensive identity was going to go through him, was going to run through him. I don't know that for a fact, but I would assume most reliable sources were kind of hinting at that, suggested that. So it seems like we would have not be affected as much by this decision in terms of how the offense will look going forward into the 2022 season, because it was going to mirror Harsin anyway, and it was just going to be a pass-through entity, for business terms, for Auburn football in terms of what Austin Davis was going to be doing in terms of what he was going to mean for the quarterback position as well. So all of those things are to be considered in that. Obviously, it gives a little bit of instability to an already unstable quarterback room, but that's all part of this thing here. Um, War he says, how do you blame Harsin for this? Davis has some issues clearly. Well, no, I think the people that are jumping to conclusions and saying that Harsin's lost the program are reacting emotionally to the situation. And look, here's what I'll say about this. We always have an emotional response, and everybody does that. So I'm not, immune to that. But you have to take a step back and not just react, especially online, to things like that, and kind of ask the question, okay, why did this happen? And what is it going to mean going forward? For us, like I've already kind of laid out for you, there's not going to be a big negative in my eyes, at least in terms of what the offense is going to shape out as in terms of Austin Davis leaving. But it does affect us negatively in recruiting, with it literally days away. Probably ruins a little bit of momentum in that category. How much does he get paid? I don't know that for a fact. I would imagine not a lot as a first-year offensive coordinator overall. He's never been an offensive coordinator. He was a quarterbacks coach and never even been in college. So that's kind of what happened there. Jamari says, I'm personally not concerned. Jeff Goodman made a good point. That's an oxymoronic situation there. Jeff Goodman making a good point on Twitter, saying that no matter who the OC is, they will be running Harsin's system. Not a big loss, as some might think. Well, let me put it to you this way. Any transition, any tumultuousness is a bad thing in a sense of that it wrecks the status quo, right? It rocks the foundation, especially when there's not really that much of a foundation laid as of yet with Coach Harsin. So that does rock it. But as you have said, and as I've suggested, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a humongous problem outside of what it initially affects, and that being the recruiting in cycle here that's happening about in just a second. Kevin, you are not late to the party, sir. We have only been going here for a few minutes, so you are just getting into the things here. Clint's here. He says, I commend Davis for realizing he wanted something different in life. Now, if he goes to take another coaching job next week, I'll reconsider. But now, kudos. So that's another angle that Clint brought up that I think is a good thing to say here. You got to ask yourself the question, do you want a coach to lie to your recruits and say, I'm going to be here, and just to get them to a signing day, and then have them, have this animosity, not just towards that coach, but probably towards Auburn as well, or just being honest and saying, look, I jumped in a little bit too early. I don't think this was for me after all. And there are some reasons probably where that might be legitimate. It's a much different world from NFL to college football. But at the same time, if he does go take another college coaching job, then you start wondering, was there other stuff? So let's wait and see what happens with that. I heard some rumors that I don't want to spread. I'll say it's better he's gone now than later, if true. Well, that's the thing about rumors, right? The way I operate always with that is where there's smoke, there's fire, but to what degree? It's not the net change of the system, it's the optics. I would agree with that, Riley. I would agree that the optics of the situation definitely aren't in favor for Auburn, but it's definitely not going to hurt us all that bad in terms of the system, the schemes, the identity. Kevin asked the question, is why was not figured out, was not figured out by Davis during the hiring process. So I guess you're asking, why did he not figure out if this was him during the hiring process? Well, I think, Kevin, if I'm just kind of trying to play devil's advocate, you do get a sense of what it's going to be like, but it's hard to really fully assess what it is until you get into it, till you get on the recruiting trail. That the recruiting cycle, the recruiting grind for coaches is so foreign to what they have to do with in the NFL scheme, in the NFL way of doing things. They're not having to recruit. They literally have staff that go out and draft players and transfers and all that stuff. They focus on coaching, not running a program. So it's a very different system. And so when you get into that, when you start realizing there's much more to that and how much time it takes away from your family, and that's what he was citing when he posted that on Twitter or in social media in general. He was saying that, his family's important to him, and he didn't realize how different it was going to be. And I commend him if that's true. Now let's just wait and see what happens in terms of what he does with a coaching job after this fact. So with that being said, if he goes to the NFL, I'm fine with that because he's going back to what he knew. But if he takes another college job, then we got to start asking some questions. Tom Brady for OC, right? Yeah, Tyler, if you can make that happen, you let us know. I think Tom Brady is just fine sitting in his penthouse. Josh says he won't be missed. Well, I think I agree in the sense. I think we could be a little nicer about it, but at the same time, I also agree with you. It doesn't, in terms of him calling plays, it's not going to really matter. We've kind of discussed that a lot already. Jamari says, especially now with the fact that coaches have to essentially re-recruit their own players to stay at their program because of the transfer portal. Yes, that's a whole nother beast, a whole nother monster as well. Recruiting alone is a monster a lot of NFL coaches probably don't want to deal with. And you see that a lot, right? Actually, it's funny that we're discussing this now because my wife and I, she likes Auburn. I mean, she loves Auburn, but she understands sports to a certain degree, and she's been asking a lot of questions, especially as she's been kind of getting to the NFL playoffs and stuff. She's like, so how do coaches go from college to NFL? Does it happen? I was like, well, it does, but usually you see kind of a coach stick to one or the other because they like the particular lifestyle that one gives over the other. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about, commitments, what you're involved with and stuff like that. So that very much is at play here. So like Kevin was asking earlier, why wasn't that figured out in the recruiting process? Yeah, you get a taste of that, but you don't really get a taste of that until you get in there and see the nitty-gritty, the dust, the grime, so to speak. Let's see here. War Eagle. Why can't we keep coaches? Bill says. Well, it's a much more complicated question than that, Bill. We had the guy we wanted at OC after we got rid of Bobo. Obviously now, because I think that got lost in translation here, Zach Hill was supposed to be the OC, but there was some NCAA violation things that he just got in trouble with officially over at Arizona State. I think he's resigned now. So once that happens, you're scrambling to figure something out in the middle of a recruiting cycle. You go find this guy, Austin Davis. Looks like it's going to work out. He has a change of heart. And so it's just a convoluted situation. It's not a matter of why can't we keep coaches. There's nothing that Auburn is doing wrong in the sense that we are not a desirable place to be. It's simply the fact that we have just made some choices in a particularly rough situation as well. Brett says that Harsin needs to shore up his own house. Well, great point there. And I want to touch on this for just a second here. So let's look at what the breakdown of his offensive or his staff in general is of now. I guess I'll go through all of them real quick, very fast here. Obviously, Bryan Harsin himself. Jeff Schmedding is now the defensive coordinator. We just got through discussing that a few days ago. So here we are again. Brad Bedell, tight ends coach. Zach Etheridge, cornerbacks coach. Will Friend, offensive line. Eric Keesaw. Hold on to that for a second. Wide receiver coach. Jeff Pittman, strength and conditioning. Burt Watts, associate head coach, special teams coordinator, outside linebackers coach. And then Carnell Williams as your running backs coach. And then Brad Larondo, who's your chief of staff. He's not really a coach, but he's so involved, you might as well throw him in there as well. What I want to point out to you now is this interesting fact that I thought we would have happened to start off with, but it's ended up that way. Auburn's coaching staff now consists of only 1, Carnell Williams, 2, Will Friend, and 3, Zach Etheridge, non-Boise State related coaches. Every one of those, Schmedding, Bedell, Keesaw, Pittman, Watts, Larondo, all of them have previous ties to Harsin and at Boise State. So we essentially now, I think someone said it, the Spud Patrol for being from Ohio, Idaho. I just combined Iowa and Idaho. From Idaho. That was a very funny comment that I saw on social media and it made me chuckle, but it is true. Coach Harsin now has basically his staff from Boise State, minus Carnell Williams, Zach Etheridge, and Will Friend. I'm okay with that personally. I am. I think it's a good thing that he's got his guys here on his staff. Brett says we need an innovative offensive mind again. Yeah, but where are you going to go find it at this point? And so that leads me into the next point that I wanted to make here. Who is going to fill the role at offensive coordinator now? Who is it going to be? Well, right now, it's hard to salvage the situation for recruiting purposes with it 2 days away. So, the question is, do you promote someone within to maintain that stability, express that to the athletes coming in, or do you take the time to go find someone else? What is the better dividend? What is going to pay better? At this point, with what we've been through, my assumption and my desire is that he promotes Eric Keesaw, the wide receivers coach, who was already just a general staffer and now got promoted to wide receivers coach and now should be the offensive coordinator. I've seen not just, and I'm sure many of you have seen that as well. And Thomas says this here, sources say Keesaw for OC, Harsin's way or the highway. It makes a lot of sense. And the people that I talk to, I'm also hearing that is very likely. It is the way that makes the most sense. But let's see what happens, because this has literally been one of the more up and down roller coaster rides of an offseason that we've had in quite some time. And I'm saying that even with a head coach that was hired last year. It's really odd. It's a really weird situation for Auburn to be in. And I'm still getting used to it myself. Let's see here. If Harsin had such a hard time keeping coaches, why are all these Boise State guys sticking with him so long? Why are players coming back? I think I understand what you're asking there, Wade, and I think this is kind of directed to people that are screaming, "Oh, we're losing the program" and stuff like that. Right. So it's not all doom and gloom. Is it ideal? 100% no. But you now essentially have laid the foundation that you were comfortable with at Boise State, minus a few people that you probably need to have on your staff to be part of the Auburn culture, Carnell, Zach, all that kind of stuff. So at this point, if you see people sticking around, choosing to come back, and yes, those decisions are made and talking about players, those decisions were being made to help themselves too. You have to wonder, is the problem really Harsin, or is it just we've been in a kind of still a transition period? And that's what it is. Has any coach since Pat Dye had the final say in hiring? Now, I would wonder why you would ask that, Leanne, because there's always this assumption out there that the powers that be, as they like to call it, have their hands in this. What makes you think that this was not his decision? It's always that kind of dynamic and angle is always interesting to me, because I don't really understand it all that much. Wade is suggesting what a lot of people are also talking about: promote Keesaw to OC, bring in Trevon as wide receiver coach. If you want to talk about simplicity, if you want to talk about just, making the easy transition here, that's how you do it. You got to find a way to put Trevon Reed on the staff and keep him there. This accomplishes that. Personally, it does. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Promote Keesaw up. He's your guy. It's going to be your offense. Keep the guy on staff that made it. He's a former wide receiver. Excuse me. Also defensive back. But you really have him on board mainly for, recruiting purposes. As an Auburn fan, what are we supposed to think with all the recent departures and just scarcity within the program? Scarcity in the program. And I'm not sure what you're asking there. What are you supposed to think? You're in a transition period still. 1 year doesn't mean, when you switch the way Auburn did from a scheme, a philosophy, a way of doing things, that is the difference between Malzahn to Harsin. It's going to take more than one season. It means patience. It means waiting for it. It means understanding this is what you wanted. Not everybody did, but most everybody did. And that's what comes with it. It's not a lightning in the bottle situation. I think everybody expected what happened with Malzahn in year one to happen here, or at least in year two. And it feels like at this point, it's not going to happen that way, the way things are going. But you have to understand it's a much different situation. Malzahn walked into a situation where he had his players. He was removed 1 year from being offensive coordinator to be head coach at Arkansas State, came back after 1 year, and his team is still there. The guys he recruited, the guys he coached, all there. Much different situation. Leanne says, you were speaking about Davis, but that doesn't specifically answer your question. Let me go back up then and see what you were asking and see if I can find what I did not answer. Leanne, where did it go? It's not showing up on my, oh, there it is. Has any coach since Pat Dye had a final say on hiring? I don't know. If you have information other than what I know, then you're welcome to share it here, because I think it's an easy assumption to make that coaches don't have final say on things. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I would anticipate it does happen to some degree. People with money, people with pull always have a say, but he still has to listen to it. Don't think Coach Harsin is one of the guys that gets pushed around too much, just based on what I'm seeing and what I know about him. D, that's a funny comment, but I'm not going to stir the pot with that one. Now, Whitey Panda, let me address your comment here. Let me just address this. No. And I'm a Gus guy. I was not in favor of getting Coach Malzahn fired. I was not a fan of transitioning away. And that feeling, in that opinion, it had nothing to do, even when Harsin was hired, it had nothing to do with him and his success level. But if you do that now, you will become the Tennessee of Auburn football. Auburn's that close of Auburn football. You will become the Tennessee again. Auburn's that close. Getting rid of Harsin simply because you don't like the way things are going currently, it's not going to happen. I would love for Gus Malzahn to have never been fired, but we can't do that. That's gone. We have to move on from that. So we have to, for those of us that were in the Gus camp, we should react to this much differently and hopefully much better than those that were very negative towards Gus. And you can be critical of Gus, but you don't, there's a fine line there that people weren't able to walk. Lee, you may just be getting in here. We've been talking a lot about that. Obviously, I don't think there's really too much more I can express other than we've already talked about here. That the sky is not falling. It is simply trying to find a foundation that you can work from that's solid footing. Harsin needs a job description made for the position. Sounds like the Austin Davis was a little flaky. I think flaky personally is just a little harsh, but I could see why you think that. I think, as we talked a little bit about, when you get into the recruiting process here, it's a much different thing than the NFL. I appreciate his honesty with not going too far into being here, to just kind of up and run in the middle of summer. Jamari says, I understand more and more why you didn't want Gus to leave now. I'm still on board with letting Gus go and having Harsin as OC, but the position Harsin was thrown in is rough and is going to take time. Absolutely. So and I think, Jamari, I really appreciate your perspectives always, because I think you understand where I'm coming from, even if we don't agree on that topic, is that, anybody was going to struggle outside of, some slam dunk hire, like at the time, a Dabo Swinney, which is what I was saying. Wade, there's a novel concept. Let Harsin finish his contract, then decide. What a novel concept. You all, I hope, will be on board for 4 years at the bare minimum. I always say a coach needs 4 years to implement his system, to get his staff solidified, to get a full recruiting class through. And I'm talking about freshman to senior. You really need 5, but all I'm asking is for 4. And that is when you can make definitive decisions about whether Harsin is or isn't a right fit for Auburn. And it's going to be rough during those times. You could become Tennessee. We're not there yet. I want to stress that. But that is a possibility. And I think firing Harsin or, whatever, only solidifies that becoming a reality. Everything happens for a reason. Austin Davis might not even be as good as we had hoped. Might have dodged a bullet on the bright side. That's also a possibility as well. is a very true possibility. It also is true that he could have been the one that kind of got everything going. I was very hopeful for Austin Davis, thinking that he was going to be here for quite some time. How wrong was I? And I thought how young he was, first time as offensive coordinator, being groomed under Harsin, would have built some long-term stability at the offensive side of the ball. Timing isn't great, but better than mid-season. It's a fair point. Timing, obviously, with recruiting, but yes. He said it's all about his family, bragged about how he was welcomed into the Auburn family. I don't think he was bragging. I just think that he was saying that he appreciated the way that he was brought into the fold so quickly and embraced, as we tend to do. And that's why I think that's why we react this way too, because we love so hard and it hurts so hard when it doesn't go our way. His honesty about his family thing, I think is true. I think it's true that, this would have required more of his attention, time away from his family than it would have required in the responsibilities he would have had in an NFL team. Wade says, I still think we're improving, not declining as far as talent and culture. I wouldn't say that we're improving. I would say that we are stabilizing. I think stabilizing is probably a better way to say that. And that's still a positive thing because that's what Auburn needs right now, is to stabilize the program. If you don't do that, you do become Tennessee. Brett says he thinks that basketball being awesome is putting pressure on the football staff. We are indeed a football school. Maybe so. I don't really think it amounts to much in that, though. That's just my personal opinion, though. They succeed, we all succeed. Joe Brady would have been nice to see as an AU offensive coordinator. Maybe so. Didn't work out so well from the OC, though. Just because it looks good at one school doesn't mean it's going to translate over to the other. I'm much more in favor of going with familiarity and something that has shown previous success with Coach Harsin. I think that's Eric Keesall. Do we now hire the best quarterback coach we can get our hands on? Probably. What you could, like we've discussed. Sorry, I keep knocking this table. We've discussed this a little bit. The easy thing to do would be to promote Keesall, move Trevon Reed in, and then hire a quarterbacks coach. I don't know if we have the space for that, being that I think our staff is full at this point. I could be wrong on the numbers, but you may not be able to bring in a quarterback coach if you promote someone like a Trevon Reed up to wide receiver coach. If you don't promote him and keep Keesall as the offensive coordinator, but have him focus on the wide receivers, which is, there's a tendency for the offensive or defensive coordinator to have a speciality. So if you do that, then maybe you can go get a really great quarterback coach. Let's see here. Try to catch up on some of the comments here. Yeah, real quick, so we can celebrate that. Still number one in that. That's a great thing if we want to put like something here to shine up this bad feeling that we're having. All right, I'll get back to the comments and questions real quick. Let me remind you very briefly of what our stream today is brought to you by, and that is our Booster Club, patreon.com/E2C Network. Several of our Booster Club members have checked in here already. Thank you guys so much. I hope you all are enjoying the exclusive stuff that you get there on the channel. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you'd like to be a part of that, you can sign up for $1 a month by going over to that link. It's in the description as well if you just want an easy route over there to check that out. All right, back to the comments and questions here. We're all just kind of taking all of this in. Greg says we're on the way up. Sit and enjoy. I would agree. Sit back and enjoy the ride. It's okay to take a step back, though, and kind of, process all this stuff and work through it and kind of get in the feels for just a little bit, as long as we don't take it overboard. Brock says that a common theme for Auburn is to fire a coach while he's trying to build. Only reason Bruce Pearl was able to build is because no one was paying attention to basketball at the time. You might have a point. You might have a point there. They were paying attention to basketball at the moment that Bruce Pearl got here, but your point still stands that coaches need to be given time to build their program to what they want it to be. They do. Coach Harsin deserves that time. And I hope that we give it to him, and I believe that we will. I don't think we're in a position to go somewhere else anytime soon. The question now doesn't need to be, is Harsin the right guy? The question needs to be, how do we continue the stabilization of the program going forward? And I think with the departure of Austin Davis at this point in the season, at this point in the process, you have to start considering things like promoting Keesaw, moving up a Trevon Reeder, and then spending some time to go find a quarterback coach, or just let Harsin do the quarterbacks, as was supposedly his specialty. Speciality? I'm having trouble talking today. Auburn needs to hire a former NFL cornerback to coach the quarterbacks. There might, after this season, be 2 NFL quarterbacks retiring. You know, I know those are fun things to talk about, but I don't know if you're being serious about it. I would say no. Just because someone was a great quarterback doesn't mean that they'll be a great coach. In fact, I would counter that often you see the backup quarterbacks being the better coaches, you know, down the line. I think Kellen Moore is probably one of the few people that are different from that. I'm trying to think of anybody else offhand, but, you know, Bryan Harsin was a quarterback, and he wasn't really, for all accounts and purposes, a great quarterback. Nobody was really talking about his career, but he seems to have a prowess for understanding that position, for teaching that position. If you look at how Bo Nix did progress this season when he was healthy, you can see that kind of reflected in that even in that short amount of time, Bo made some improvements. So even if you don't go hire a quarterback's coach, if there's no room for that, then you've got a guy in Bryan Harsin that could potentially take care of that. A lot of wishful thinking at this point. And I'm glad some of y'all are having fun with that. Tom Brady, I am not a fan of the dude, but I do recognize that he is the GOAT, so I would not like him anywhere near my program. Christian says he didn't want or couldn't handle recruiting or didn't understand how much recruiting was involved. I would agree with that. I don't know that I guess you can say that it was, he couldn't handle it, but it is a case of, you know, it's more than he anticipated. And I really think, without speaking to him personally, we're going to have to just assume that's what it boiled down to, that the recruiting, when you get into it and you realize it's a non-stop process. And someone brought it up earlier. Now with the transfer portal, it's just made it almost unbearable. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see in coming years enhancements, or you're allowed to have more staff members, simply because you need them to handle all of this. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Lee says we don't know if Tom Brady's retired yet. Yeah, somebody asked me that the other day. I didn't mean to be, I hope I didn't come off as rude on that live stream, that what are my thoughts on Tom Brady? And I was like, I don't care. Tom Brady is Tom Brady. He's not someone that I really follow. Leanne, did you just say you joined as a booster? Well, thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you so much. I will be sending you some messages and emails in the Booster Club to help you get acquainted with what's going on there. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. And you guys can join up too over at patreon.com/E2C Network. Links in the description. Dusty's in the house. What's going on? How do you not know what's involved? He had to have been warned by other coaches, and Harsin told him what's up in the interview. And we've talked about that, Dusty, since I think you're just now getting in here. It's you can be warned, you can be told, but when you get into the meat and potatoes of it, that's when it really sets in. Oh, this really is going to be more than I was expecting, or bit off more than I can chew. It's frustrating. I know it is. And I know, Dusty, you and I have had conversations where you're kind of starting to, not sour, but be concerned about the trajectory of things. And this is not helping that for you. But my best thing that I can offer you is encouragement, that just to settle in, enjoy the ride that is Auburn football, whether you enjoy it or not. And I understand that people are frustrated with it right now. And you juxtapose that with the success that the basketball program is having. And it's just like, fans are so happy about this one thing. It's hard to kind of get excited for something that doesn't seem to be having the success that it typically has. But that's what happens. Alabama too will have a time where they dip down again, just like every team has. So nobody is immune to transitions, to fluctuations in success, and tumultuous times. Just kind of rounding out our thoughts a little bit here. You guys keep the comments and questions coming in, though, if you haven't gotten your thought in just yet. Now, Coach Harsin's staff is mainly consisted of his Boise State guys, the Spud Patrol, as it was called on social media. The only three, Zach Etheridge, Carnell Williams, and Will Friend, left. Now remains to be seen if he'll promote a guy like Trevon Reed up to wide receiver after Keesall potentially takes the offensive coordinator job, if that's what he chooses to do. Brock, so do you think Keesall will be the new OC? Kind of great segue there. I do think he will be at this point. Based on what I am being told, I think it makes sense at this moment, but this is going to be a rapidly changing situation. And it may be one of those things where Coach Harsin is probably telling recruits as we head up to the last couple of days here, this is what we think we're doing, but we're going to take our time to make sure we get you the best possible thing, or even asking them, are you happy with us promoting Keesall? Because they probably know him. So, that's probably what's going to happen. I expect that as of this moment, but that can rapidly change. Certainly concerned. I know I could feel like Dusty just wanting to say more. Can we get back to the Arizona State guy? No, he just got knocked for violations at Arizona State. He was dead in the water, so to speak, and that's why we didn't get him, which kind of put us into this cycle of tumultuousness that is Auburn's coaching staff in general, but the offensive coaching staff especially. Here's what I will, if I can take a Pollyanna approach. I'm happy as of this moment that Will Friend seems to be staying. We need stability, consistency in some form at the offensive line position, and I think keeping him on staff will be a good thing. Obviously, that could change with everything that has happened, but boy, it's been fun. Auburn football offseason, hasn't it? It has been crazy. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a couple of reminders of what to expect the rest of the week on this channel. Give you a couple of things to keep in mind as well, and then we'll take some last-minute comments, questions, derogatory rebuttal here at the back end of our live stream. As we talked about, go check out some of the links in the description for ways that you can help support our content here. There's the Booster Club. You can hit the join button here. It's easier to find it on the desktop to become a channel member here. Both those start at $1 a month. There's different tiers at the Booster Club, though. There's TeePublic, where you can buy some of our gear and some other Auburn-related stuff, and also the PayPal donation button down there. Schedule for this week. Tomorrow, late, very late, post-game live stream for Auburn versus Alabama. You do not want to miss it. It is going to be a fun one, regardless of how the game results. I'm sure this will be very much talked about with the way Auburn is performing, the way Alabama had a big upset win. Don't miss it tomorrow night. It'll be right after the game is over. Be subscribed, hit that notification bell so you know when we're going live. Wednesday, live stream. Everybody can call in. It'll be open to everybody. We'll be most likely talking about recruiting, so don't miss that one. That will probably be our main topic on the stream on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have other videos coming out for you this week around 1 o'clock usually is when we post them. Another meme video. We'll probably have a video about Bruce Pearl's contract coming out tomorrow, if nothing else breaks news-wise, because that was supposed to go out today. But that's what you can expect from us. And, of course, podcast galore. Great response from our Allie Davidson interview podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning into that one. All right, let's get back to your comments real quick as we round out our show. We need to stand behind Coach Harsin and give him a chance. Don't give the Bammers anything to be happy about. Hey, amen, right? They're having such a tough time outside of, a few upset wins here and there. I want to see them be as miserable as possible, and part of that is us succeeding. Brock says we may honestly be worse than 2012. I don't think so, seeing as how we only won 3 games. Brock, you may not remember that season very well, but I do. We are nowhere near that position. That was just awful. One of the worst times I've ever had as an Auburn football fan. I understand the sentiment. Things are not going the way we would like right now, but in no way are we anywhere near 2012 levels. That was just horrendous. Oh, my skin's crawling just thinking about it right now. So to put all that in summary, sit back, try to relax, and try to take all this in as it comes, and we'll see what happens with it. But yeah, I know you were exaggerating a little bit, but it does feel that way. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on such short notice. Great crowd as always. You guys are the best little family within the Auburn family. Stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, notification bell, smash that like button on the way out if you enjoyed this. Thank you guys so much, and war.